Okay, we're getting started. Howdy, howdy. You there?
Yeah, hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right.
Yep.
I'm getting this thing up and going. Oh, back on Podbean Live. Yeah. This is the inner sanctum thoughts. So, um, anyway, the first one went all right. I was coming up with stuff on the fly.
Gotcha. Well, I dug a little deep and got some. Well, I tell you what, especially on a few women, they were pretty brutal.
Yeah. See here. Seems like there was something else I was going to do, but I don't think there is. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, some of them were pretty nasty. Uh, anyway. I'm going to see if I can. Because when I do post this, I don't want it to be just a big image of you and a little image of me. Oh. I don't know if that did anything. Ha ha ha! I can change my background.
That's a lie back there.
Huh?
All that behind you, that's a lie.
No. Uh, I want to expand my screen.
I don't know. It don't do like it does with three people.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do
There it
that.
goes. Uh. It's, you see how you've got the little box of you down like the corner?
Yeah.
If you go, do you have the three things like in the middle of the screen?
On my picture or what?
Well, if I put the mouse cursor on my picture, there's like three things that pop up, and one of them's the three dots.
Yeah.
If you click on the three dots, and there's a thing that says "Remove this tile," it's at the top of the three dots. You can click
There
that.
you go.
So it splits it into two.
Yeah, that's a lot better.
So we learned something today.
Always learning something.
If you don't learn something new every day, you ain't living. Um, so this is part 2 of Jack the Ripper. It, got the, I set up the other YouTube page, which is Paranormal Adventures Presents. So, man, that looks weird. The way I move. Anyway, in the screen, it makes it look weird. But, I think I'm going to get rid of that. Maybe. If I can figure out how to. I don't care. Anyway. I forgot what I was saying. Part 1, I kind of went into a couple of the ladies that got killed. And it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, I wrote down there were several that was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Had this one lady, she was Martha Abram. Her throat, chest, and abdomen was cut. Mary Nichols, her throat was cut and she was disemboweled.
Yeah.
But these others right here, oh my gosh. Annie Chapman removed and took her womb. And that's when they, with her, that's kind of when they started thinking it might be, someone having to do with the medical profession or a butcher.
Yeah, I was gonna say one theory is a butcher because there's like a butcher shop or a what I guess they would call it a rendering plant or a where they put the animals down to.
Yeah,
it sounds kind of graphic, but it's where they slaughterhouse. That's one.
Right. But yeah, some of these, golly, like this one, he mutilated her face, removed and took her uterus and left kidney. I mean, that's kind of a sicko.
Yeah.
And this Alice McKenzie, her wounds, she had wounds to her throat, deep wound from all the way from left breast to her navel, shallow wounds and scratches to her lower abdomen.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a pretty good sicko.
Yeah. So the way the 5 that are credited to him, it started off with Mary Ann Nichols, then it goes to Annie Chapman, then Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly.
Yeah, there was technically there was 11 victims, but 5 of which were really his victims. They just kind of blamed some of the other stuff on him.
From what I was reading earlier, what was it? By the time it was all over, there's like 13 murders.
Well, and they think that there was probably more because the type of women that he was killing, nobody really paid attention.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there could have been possibly earlier victims. And what was really interesting is, most of his killings, were, like from September of 1888 through like November. And then there was a little break. And then he come back like July 17th, 1889. And then September 10th was the last one, which was a totally mutilated body, and they couldn't even identify it.
Which makes me wonder if the he was selling the parts on the black market, but I don't know if they had the technology back then to, like, he took the uterus out of one woman, or out of them, and
He took a left kidney too.
yeah, I don't know if they had the technology to put them back in somebody else.
I wouldn't think so back in 1888. If they did, it would probably be pretty dangerous, for infections and everything.
But
and I find it real interesting, the double murder that was pulled on September 30th. The first victim, she just had her throat slit, but they think that murder was interrupted. And then the second one was later on that same night, and she was horrifically murdered. I think he was pretty mad about being interrupted in the first one.
Yeah, they and the way I think a couple of these they happened really quickly. I mean, there's people that walk by, then within minutes came back past, and there was somebody dead one of the women was found dead. So he had to be really skilled to be able to move that quickly.
I agree with you. He had to have been knowledgeable about where to cut flies, and he had to have pretty sharp items. Whether it be a scapula or a butcher knife.
Yeah, I would say it had to, it had to be as sharp as a scalpel anyway.
No doubt, no doubt. Yeah, it was definitely brutal in this. Of course, they brought in this really good inspector to put in charge of it, which was Inspector Frederick George Aberline. He was put in charge of it, and he brought in a lot of suspects. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Can't remember how many total suspects, but there was like 8 of them that fit the more of the profile of Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, one guy that people think could have been Jack the Ripper was H. Holmes.
Yeah,
he about around the same time the killings ended in London, he moved to America. So that's a possibility too, and he continued he was killing here in America.
It could be possible because here in them early times they didn't keep up with a lot of murders.
No.
That was back. For us, that would be in the Old West times. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely. I thought it really amazing. The police, kept getting all them letters. I think it said 700 letters to the police, and 300 of them, at least 300, were pranks.
Yeah.
But it was like he was teasing them. And like, ha ha ha, y'all can't catch me.
Yeah. there's one of his letters that I was kind of reading near the end of this. It's called the bo- the Dear Boss letter. So when we get close to ending this, I figured I'd read that letter, and I think it's the one that uh, ended up giving him his name of Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, because he had two other nicknames. One was the Whitechapel Murderer, and the other one was Leather Apron.
Yeah.
How he got that one was the murder of Annie Chapman on September 8th, 1888. Uh, they found a leather apron was found by her body.
Huh. I didn't. I didn't read. I hadn't read that yet.
Yeah, and of course she was one of them that he removed her womb.
Yeah.
So he's got a leather apron, which back then is pretty fancy for as far as aprons go. That would make you think like a butcher. I don't know if a medical person would wear that
I
type of
don't think
apron.
so. I think more
It does seem to point to more of a butcher style
yeah,
with the leather apron.
because a butcher, uh, I know that they are precise, but like in a slaughterhouse or even in a butcher shop, I know you've had your share of butchering deer and stuff like that. Yeah, they're you're more likely to cut yourself in a butcher shop than you are in an operating room.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Or
And
even
then
in a slaughterhouse, it just
you, yeah, and then you gotta, the key to all that, is keeping your knives really sharp.
yeah.
So I mean, your knives, a good knife it'll slice just as well as the scalpel.
Yeah. Um and and I know people have wondered why. Well, he had been really bloody after doing that, but if you think about it, the hygiene back then wasn't what it is today. And
Definitely not.
especially where they were at, because where they were at was more of a kind of a slum area, and with the butcher shop, slaughterhouse, or whatever in that area, you're gonna have the people that work there are most likely gonna be walking past you covered in animal blood. So seeing somebody with blood on them wasn't an unusual thing.
Well, that and plus you had around that time period, they talked about a lot of gangs in the area. You had your gangs, and then you had your, real dirty prostitutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, the hygiene wasn't very good.
And a lot of the places like where these women were staying, uh, like the boarding houses and stuff where they were staying, you paid each night to stay there.
Right.
And I kind of talked about it earlier that uh, one for a certain bed it to sleep on it was like a pence with or 4 pence was at the time was uh, equal to 4 pennies, and in today's money, and this is over in Europe and everything, so they go with the pound. In today's money, that's 2 pounds, which is I looked it up. That's $2.62 in American money. So
Wow.
then the better beds they they was the better beds that they could get was double that. So it's basically, at the time it's basically 8 cents
Right.
for a better bed. But there were the area was highly overpopulated, and so if you didn't get in there and pay 4 cents, you're out of luck. And most of these places wouldn't let you stay in that room all day. You paid 4 cents, slept, and left. Then
Right.
you came back, paid 4 cents, and got a different bed. And a lot of them places, were ate up with like bed bugs, lice, and all
Oh,
sorts of stuff.
no doubt about it.
So it's pretty raunchy.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, though, his time frame of killing, I mean, he was hot and heavy, starting in August of 1888, and
Yeah.
all the way up through, November, and then it stopped for a little bit, and then all of a sudden there was like two more in 1889. So it makes you wonder, were they getting close to him and he decided to stop, or what happened?
Look how close he was to getting caught though before, because it was just a matter of minutes between the time somebody walked by and the time they came back by.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, he's a very interesting serial killer.
Yeah.
Definitely. I guess he'd probably be one of the first serial killers.
Yeah. This is kind of how I do the way I'm doing my thoughts from the inner sanctum is I'll find something and I'll just talk about it.
Right.
Not necessarily have a lot of research on it, but just kind of talk about it, get people interested, and we can really deep dive into it on one of our episodes or something.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting that one of the suspects was H.H. Holmes.
Yeah, I know it.
That for those wrestling fans, he's the original Triple H.
Pretty much. Yeah, there's actually a site if anybody wants to get on it and really dive deep into it. Go to jacktheripper.org. And they have everything that you can think of, from the letters to suspects, all the victims, how they died, when they died, you name it. It has everything.
I'm looking up or trying to look up the so-called suspects.
Yeah, go to that jacktheripper.org and you can get a list of them.
Come on now, show me more. Yeah, I just found it.
Yeah, at the top of the page, it should have suspects up there. Click on it, and it'll give you the whole list.
Okay, so-called suspects, which there are quite a few.
Yeah, there was quite a few.
Carl Feigenbaum, I guess that's how you say his name. Then Joseph Barnett, France Craig, and they got this in weird writing.
Yeah, I know.
Prince Albert Victor. I don't see him being. He's kind of I guess he's a prince, but I don't see him being in Whitechapel. But
You never can tell, though. I mean, serial killers, they go to great lengths to hide their identity.
of course, being a prince, he might be looking for a hookup too, and didn't want to be caught in a better place.
Yeah. You know who Jack the Ripper does remind me of, though?
Who's that?
Well, the Zodiac Killer, the Zodiac was basically a modern day Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
That's one we really need to get into at some point.
Yeah. And we might do some more of the deep dives on this. On what I'm
Oh
doing
yeah,
here.
you can go further into it. You can get like some of the letters. And on that site, you can pull up a lot of the letters.
Yeah. Kind of off topic for a second, talking about serial killers and stuff like that. I know we're the show that Crystal and I do is more ghostly and stuff like that, and the one me, you, and Richard do is a lot of cryptid stuff, and we can add this as kind of a mixture of being kind of leaning towards the paranormal, but a little more into the true crime serial killer thing too. Just on this side of it, so it kind of keeps everything a little bit separated.
Well, to me, like Jack the Ripper, he's a serial killer. In my mind, he's a savage. He's brutal. And
Yeah.
who knows? I mean, he might be a little demonic in the mind.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? Some it the is the similar to the cattle mutilations.
In ways, yeah.
There's aspects of it that's similar to the cattle mutilations, but that's just kind of where my head went to.
That's another story for another time, Sean.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards the serial killer aspect of things, and maybe get into some true crime stuff that kind of unexplained, dabble into the could be a little more paranormalish in the.
Well, some of these serial killer minds, it makes you wonder what was actually on their mind.
Yeah, there's the one that's son of Sam.
Yeah.
He claims the dog was telling him to do it. Like Jack the Ripper, he was never found.
No.
And there's so many of them that, yeah, they were crazy, and you would think somebody that psychotic would be easy to find. It would stand out in the crowd, But even with Jack the Ripper, you couldn't tell him from anybody else because, that's one of them he was never found.
Well, that's why I kind of compare him to the Zodiac Killer, because it was the same thing with the Zodiac Killer too, because he was never caught either. He just all of a sudden everything just stopped.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder: was the police getting so close to him that they decided to move away and go somewhere else? Maybe start up killing again in another area, or what?
Yeah. it and there's I've heard of cases where somebody would go on a killing spree, not get caught, and for years wouldn't do it again for years. Then all of a sudden they get the evidence like 30 years later. The evidence proves it's this person. It's like, why did they have this all of a sudden this urge to kill these people? Then it just stops.
Right, right.
So
There was one I read. I don't know. It's been several years back. I can't even really remember who it was, but it was a killer, and he fled and went somewhere else, and I think he even married and had a whole family, and someone just they seen his face on what was that old show about mysteries, unsolved mysteries,
mysteries.
and someone seen his picture up there, and that got him caught.
Yeah. There was one where the guy and girl, they were from up north somewhere. I don't know if they was in Canada or just below the Canadian border, or, just south of the Canadian border. But they were young, and he had his pilot's license, and they were leaving, or they took off. They basically were running away from home, and I think she was like 18 or 19, something like that. And the plane ended up crashing in this lake, and it was a whole big ordeal. The people claimed that they had seen the guy. He was soaking wet and everything, and he ended up, I think it was somewhere in Texas. But the girl ended up dying in the plane crash, and he ended up somewhere. He was down in Texas, and he found. I think he found the a name on a gravestone. So where their age was. They would be about the same age. He was been about the same age as the name on this headstone. So he was able to get a social security number and all that, and use that name for his own, and just completely live a different life,
Yeah.
under a different name. And the girl he was running off with had died in the plane crash, and he claims he was so distraught over it that he just, by the time he realized he had done, it was too late. He had already done it, so he just lived his own life and had a girlfriend and all that. And the girlfriend's like, so ended up seeing his picture somewhere, and it's like, hey, I think I'm dating this dude. So it's crazy.
Oh, I know. It's little things like that. You just never know anymore. Your next door neighbor could be a dead serial killer, and you'd never know it.
Uh, there's one I'm trying to remember the guy's name. It's something Pickens. I believe it's from up in Canada, but he was a serial killer. But you make me think of him because they had a hog farm.
Oh,
Yeah. So
it's not me, Sean. It's not me.
You sure? No, this dude ended up caught, and he's in prison. But I'll
Yeah,
work on.
it just kind of And I shouldn't. I guess it's kind of a bad thing. I shouldn't be intrigued with it. I'm more or less fascinated with what was what was on their minds. Was the devil telling them to do it? What was going on? During the whole time.
Yeah. Robert Picton. That's the guy's name. But he ended up being a serial killer, killing like a bunch of which is similar to Jack the Ripper. He killed prostitutes. But he's one of them. He had a lot of money from the hog farm and selling off some of the property. He ended up with a lot of money, but he basically lived like he was he he lived in a house trailer that his was pretty much trashed. His mattress was on the floor and all that stuff, and it there's a lady that had stayed there, and she was pretty much saying, man, it was disgusting, just the way his house was. But he had, his parents and they'd left him and his siblings a pretty sizable amount of money, and they sold off some of the property, and it just he he had some issues, but he'd go into town, pick up a prostitute, and bring them back, and ended up killing them. And he 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 they butchered a lot of the hogs themselves, so he knew how to butcher the hogs and everything, and that's where he would butcher these prostitutes was in the out there where they butchered the hogs, and
What was he eating the meat too?
the meat ended up in some of the he was selling some of the meat that had the human meat in it mixed in with the hog meat. But yeah, he it was crazy though, and they feel, I don't know if y'all did that or not, but they'd fill up these big barrel drums with like the excess stuff, the blood and all the extra stuff that doesn't go with the meat, and take it to a rendering plant. Well, the rendering plant is supposed to check them barrels when they
And they
open up.
wasn't.
Yeah, they said, well, we knew him, and they've been coming here for so long that we quit checking them, and the police got went through there, and some of the barrels they would open up, and there was like a human skull in one, or the arms and legs in another, stuff like that. I'm like, man, if the rendering plant would have just been checking and doing their job, they would have been caught a lot sooner.
Right. But it's that way, people, some of these serial killers, they get so, you know, well known in their community and nobody ever suspects them.
That this the Robert Picton that I was talking about, he just passed away last year, so he's it's not that old of a case.
Huh.
But I'm gonna send you a picture of him so you can tell he's got some. Just looking at him, you can tell he's got some mental issues. But he looks pretty rough. but that's one I want to get into as well.
Yeah, he kind of looks the part.
Yeah. He's one of them. It's like, how could you not tell that he's not right? There's a documentary about him called The Pig Farm. So if
Huh.
I've watched it, it's pretty good. But we kind of got away from Jack the
Yeah,
Ripper a
we
little bit.
did. We did.
But this is like I was saying earlier. This is kind of how I want to. I'm doing this show is what right now is I get to talking about one thing where it'll lead into something else or whatever. So like kind of like what Crystal and I did the other day with the show about the cults. We got started about talking about one cult and ended up talking about 3 or 4 others as well.
Oh yeah, it's easy to do.
I was kind of hoping we'd get some listeners on Podbean tonight, but haven't got any.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, why don't you pull up one of them letters and read one of them letters that Jack the Ripper wrote?
all right, yeah, I've got one pulled up. Well, it if I can get it to go there. This is the it's titled the Dear Boss letter. So it says, Dear Boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. Just yet, I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about Leather Apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores, and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work that last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again, but you will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope. Ha ha. The next job I do shall clip the lady's ears off and send the police officers just and send to the police officers just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife is nice and sharp. I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind me giving the trade name. P.S. Wasn't good enough to post this before I got all the red ink off my hands. Curse it. No luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha.
Well, he said a knife and stuff, so I'm leaning toward a butcher.
Yeah. That and a scalpel, you don't sharpen a scalpel.
No.
So I that's kind of what I'm thinking about is, a butcher or something like can that actually sharpens their knives.
Right.
So
Yeah, he sounds like a real character now.
yeah. So oh crap. This one's just gonna have to be on Podbean Live because I forgot to hit. I I'm putting on the Paranormal Adventures YouTube page. Then it's gonna be on Podbean Live, but I forgot to hit record on my voice recorder. So we done all this without me recording it. So there's not a part 2 on the regular stream.
Oh, okay. So not on Podbean, but it'll be on YouTube.
It'll be on Podbean Live, just not the where the regular episodes are listed.
We live and learn, Sean. Yeah. We live and learn.
I pulled a Richard.
Yeah.
I got to think about it. I was like, did I hit record on that? But I've got too much stuff going.
Well, do we want to wrap this up?
We can. Are we planning on doing that other episode Wednesday?
I'm not going to be able to do it Wednesday. Okay. My dad, his appointments are later in the day, so there's not going to be any way.
I didn't know if we were doing it this way Wednesday or not.
Oh, this coming Wednesday? Yeah. Now, if y'all wanted to, we could, if we can get everything ready. Because this week I'm off. I don't have to go to Little Rock. Yeah. But the following week is the one where I have to go to Little Rock.
Okay. That's fine. It don't matter to me either way.
I guess we'll talk to Richard about it.
We'll try for this Wednesday, but if we don't make it, that's okay, because this episode we're doing is going to be pretty deep.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've already done some research on it, and I'm getting into some pretty nifty stuff.
Yeah. You see what I was talking about? It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't make no sense, some of it.
No. They drove an hour and a half in the wrong direction.
You know, and I don't know. It's a lot. We'll get into it. I don't want to give away too much.
Sounds good to me. But yeah, if we don't make it, if we can do it this Wednesday, we can. But if we don't, we can.
Well, we need to try, I think, because the following week, like I said, they made all of his appointments later on in the day.
Yeah.
And we're going to be doing his chemo, like